Rich Dad, Poor Dad is not a book about getting rich quickly. It is a book about how people think about money. Robert Kiyosaki grew up with two father figures. One was his real father, whom he calls Poor Dad, highly educated, hardworking, salaried, and financially struggling. The other was his friend's father, whom he calls Rich Dad, not highly educated, an entrepreneur, and financially free. Both men worked hard, but their thinking about money was completely different. This book explains how those differences in mindset shape financial outcomes. The author does not say one person is good and the other is bad. He simply shows how different beliefs about money create different lives. We'll move on to the first chapter, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. The first chapter introduces the contrast between the two dads. Poor Dad believed that studying well, getting a good job, and working hard would ensure financial security. Rich Dad believed that financial education and ownership mattered more than job security. Poor Dad feared mistakes and valued stability. Rich Dad encouraged learning through failure and valued long-term control over money. This chapter sets the foundation that income alone does not decide wealth. The way you think about money does. Chapter 2 is The Rich Don't Work for Money. Poor Dad worked for money all his life and waited for salary increases and promotions. Rich Dad taught that working only for money makes people dependent on salaries. When people fear losing income, they accept unfair conditions and stop thinking creatively. Rich Dad encouraged learning how money works instead of chasing it. The core idea here is that fear and desire control most people financially. The rich learn to control these emotions instead of letting money control them. Chapter 3 explains why teach financial literacy. This chapter explains the most famous concept of the book, assets and liabilities. Rich Dad defines assets as things that put money into your pocket and liabilities as things that take money out. Poor Dad believed a house was an asset. Rich Dad argued that if a house costs maintenance, taxes, and loans without generating income, it is a liability. The key message is that the rich focus on acquiring income-generating assets, while the middle class and poor accumulate liabilities thinking they are assets. Chapter 4 reminds mind your own business. Here, Rich Dad explains the difference between profession and business. A job gives income, but a business builds assets. Poor Dad focused on career growth. Rich Dad focused on asset growth. The lesson is not to quit your job immediately, but to use job income to build assets like businesses, investments, or intellectual property. Financial freedom comes from owning systems that generate income, not from working harder in someone else's system. Chapter 5 talks about the history of taxes and the power of corporations. This chapter explains how laws are structured to favor those who understand money. Employees earn, then pay taxes, and then spend. Business owners and investors earn, spend, and then pay taxes. Rich Dad emphasized learning how corporations work legally to protect income and reduce tax burden. The lesson is not to avoid taxes illegally, but to understand financial structures that legally benefit asset owners. Chapter 6 discusses how the rich invent money. Poor Dad believed money was real and fixed. Rich Dad believed money was an idea. Wealth comes from recognizing opportunities others don't see. Many people miss opportunities because they fear losing money. Rich Dad taught that financial intelligence allows people to create wealth even in difficult situations. This chapter focuses on creativity, calculated risk, and financial confidence. Chapter 7 is all about the importance of work to learn, not to earn. Poor Dad believed specialization leads to success. Rich Dad believed learning multiple skills leads to control. Sales, communication, accounting, investing, and leadership were considered essential skills. The chapter emphasizes that people who focus only on earning may earn well, but remain financially dependent. Those who learn broadly gain flexibility and long-term leverage. Chapter 8 discusses overcoming obstacles. The author explains why most people don't become financially free even when knowledge is available. The main obstacles are fear, cynicism, laziness, bad habits, and arrogance. Fear of losing money stops action. Cynicism blocks opportunity. Laziness appears as busyness. Bad habits prioritize expenses over assets. Arrogance prevents learning. Wealth is blocked more by psychology than by income. Choosing mentors, learning continuously, paying yourself first, and using pressure to think smarter. The chapter reinforces that action matters more than knowledge. Financial growth requires discipline, learning, and long-term commitment. Chapter 10 is Still Want More? The final chapter encourages readers to question traditional beliefs about money. The education system teaches academic knowledge but ignores financial intelligence. The author urges readers to think independently, observe how money flows, and take responsibility for financial outcomes. The core message is that financial freedom is a skill, not luck. The core message of the book is not about becoming rich fast. It is about understanding how money works. The book teaches that high income does not equal wealth. Assets create wealth. Liabilities destroy it. Financial freedom comes from ownership, education, and long-term thinking. The rich are not smarter. They are financially trained. Anyone willing to learn, take responsibility, and think differently can change their financial future. I am concluding it by saying, this book challenges comfort-based thinking. It questions the belief that safety leads to freedom. Instead, it argues that financial intelligence leads to control. The author does not promise easy success. He emphasizes learning, discipline, and patience. Rich Dad, Poor Dad remains relevant because money problems are not income problems. They are thinking problems.